Okay, let's continue Call of Cthulhu, the Lost Archive. I finally got this thing to work, so now we can see the Oracle. So the last response was that the intruder lunges forward, the tattered book clutched in its hand. But it's not the manuscript, it's a different tome. Now, because of that, I'm going to do a story hack to say it is the manuscript. So let's say that following. Story hack, the intruder actually is holding the manuscript. Let's see. The tally of the drowned. The book is ours, the deep ones demand their due. Okay, the deep ones. So I'm assuming. Wait, is Rebecca with us? Question for the Oracle. Is Rebecca with us? Or is it just David and the professor? I think it is just David and the professor, because Rebecca went off to do other work. Yeah, she's not present, just David. All right. David shouts, asking who he is. The snarls, his features comforting and a grotesque mockery with a smile. You will learn soon enough, Landwalker. Right? When the tides rise, all will be claimed. He raises the manuscript as if to strike. Oh, okay. So, hmm. Let's see what the professor does here. What does the professor do in this situation before David takes an action? I want to see what the professor does at the same time. Let's see. Professor Price raises the silver talisman, its green light intensifying. He chants in a low, resonant voice, and the air around the intruder crackles with unseen energy. The intruder recoils, clutching his hand and screaming in pain. Wow. All right. Now I think perhaps while the professor is doing that, David is going to take an action here and perhaps use some kind of physical attack. Looking at my weapons, I have fist punch, headbutt, kick, grapple, and oh yeah, the book and brass, which we don't have anymore, so I need to erase that from his inventory. That was used much earlier in this story. Well, I guess it was only a few episodes ago. Now with that erased, basically, let me move this camera a little bit. There we go. Let's do fist punch. So I need to roll a D100, and it has to be at a 50 or less. It's 1d3 damage. So let's roll. And it's a fail, 75. Okay. David attempts a physical action. He failed the roll. He attempted to tackle or push the intruder away. He failed the roll. It misheard me. The stumble and drop in the manuscript. No, no. Redo. I failed the roll for the physical altercation. Yeah. The intruder evades David's grasp, shoving him aside with surprising strength. He raises the manuscript, a triumphant gleam in his eye, and begins to chant in a guttural tongue. The air crackles of powder in the library's walls seem to groan in response. Okay? So at this point, the talisman is not working. The talisman wielded by the professor is not working as originally planned. It was, now it's not. The intruder's chanting grows louder, drowning out the professor's incantations. The talisman's light flickers, its power waning against the rising tide of dark energy. The intruder's form begins to shimmer, his features distorting as if something monstrous is trying to break through. Okay. Now the professor is going to shout at David to grab the manuscript because it is of his family's lineage. The professor thinks quick, shouts to David to grab the manuscript. He has to physically touch it to disable the summoning because the book belongs to David's lineage. We'll see if that works. Professor's voice is urging, cutting through the intruders, chanting, David, the book, it's the only way. Okay, so what would be a skill here? Grapple? Grapple's only 25%. Now, on my sheet here, I'm trying to see if there's another skill that I can use, and I don't see anything specific that would help here. Occult is just knowledge of the book. We're just trying to grab the actual book. We do have jump, 25. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to combine two skills. Don't know if these are per the rules, but I'm going to house rule it. Combine jump and grapple, which is 50% or less. So let's roll for it. That is a failure. 90. Another fail. No good rolls today. David attempts to jump and grab the book, but I failed the roll. What happens? No success. All right. The intruder raises the manuscript above his head, crackling manically. The chanting reaches a fever pitch. The room plunges into impressive darkness. A wave of icy seawater surges from the book, engulfing the intruder and knocking David off his feet. Now, we have to do a couple things here. I almost forgot. We have to roll for sanity because this visual obstruction is definitely something that would make David cower in fears. So I think obviously the professor is aware of this and has, I don't know if he's witnessed it himself to this extent, but he's familiar with this territory of occult, of supernatural. We're rolling first for sanity points. I don't think we got hurt just yet. Well, we can ask the Oracle if we did, but let's roll for sanity. I had to roll 40 or less for sanity. I rolled a 6 solid, so we're good. So we didn't lose any sanity points there. Now, when David got shoved or pushed, did he suffer any damage? Let's see. You were not significantly injured by the shove, but the force of the seawater blast knocks you into the ground, leaving you dazed and disoriented. Okay, so we just kind of have a physical disadvantage at the moment. Now, while David is subdued, or he's on the ground, or against the wall, or against a piece of furniture, let's say that the professor attempts something. The professor, being familiar with this supernatural, he attempts something risky. What does he do? Kind of giving the story here to the Oracle. See what he does. Professor Price, seeing the situation escalating, pulls out a small, ornate dagger from his belt and lunges towards the swirling vortex of seawater that has enveloped the intruder. He shouts a desperate incantation again, plunging the dagger into the heart of the maelstrom. 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 Okay. David is in disbelief. Again, I think we're good insanity points right now. David attempts to stand up in confusion and despair as he watches the professor leap into the swirling vortex. What transpires? This is getting really crazy. The vortex shrieks like a banshee as a dagger pierces it, then implodes with a deafening roar, throwing David back against the wall. When the dust settles, both the intruder and the professor have vanished, leaving only a faint smell of brine and a puddle of seawater on the floor. The manuscript lies open on the desk, its pages fluttering in the sudden silence. Okay, so the professor and this cult intruder vanished. Rebecca is going to, I'm assuming, run in because she heard the noise. Someone has to run in. It's during the day because we can't. The Oracle doesn't track time like GPT. I instructed for my previous videos. Call the Gray In. I tracked time, the time of day, more so. But I think it was the Gray Inn. It's both the Gray Inn and the Exeter series. Anyways, it's daytime roughly. So we're thinking either a few customer or a few patrons, or what we're gonna call them, visitors to the library, saw what happened. Let's say that Rebecca rushes in, hearing the commotion, including the manager, the boss, making a crack at what happened because of, once again, there's water on the ground in his office, in David's office. All right, Rebecca stares aghast at the scene. Walter sputters, David, again with the water damage. This is coming out of your paycheck. He storms off, muttering about insurance forms. Rebecca rushes to David's side, her eyes wide with concern. Dr. Holloway, are you all right? What happened? What did happen? All right, so David stands up and says to Rebecca that there was an intruder in here. He describes what the intruder looked like and says that the professor lunged at the intruder. There was some crazy vortex and they both vanished. All the water and all the shenanigans ensued. Now I gotta find the professor. Rebecca's eyes widen in disbelief. Vanished? But how? Where'd they go? She glances around the office, her gaze lingering in the open manuscript. What about the book? David wastes no time. He's going to grab the book, keep it closed, and go find Dr. Alex Morgan from earlier to speak to him about what happened. So we're going to go back and talk to the doctor because he's the only other real source of information or other NPC to go speak to. The drive to the hospital is intense. The manuscript is heavy weight in David's lap. Rebecca keeps glancing at him, so she's driving, or one of us are driving. Her expression a mix of worry and determination. When you arrive, Dr. Morgan is surprised to see you, but he ushers you both into a private room. Okay. Story hack. Rebecca stayed behind to keep the manager busy while David took the book and drove himself to the hospital. We are standing outside the hospital doors. What transpires? So a little alteration to the last prompt. That's why I do story hacks, so we can kind of take it and modify it. The hospital's sterile scent hits you as you push through the heavy doors. A harried-looking nurse glances at you. A harried-looking nurse glances at you, then the book clutching your hand. Can I help you, sir? Okay. David asks the nurse if he can see Dr. Alex Morgan, his neurologist. It is urgent. Please sign in, sir. I'm assuming, or take your number. Now, look what it says. This is for informational purposes only. Yes, seeking a cultist for information on a manuscript supernatural is for informational purposes only. The source, the nurse frowns slightly, tapping on her computer. Dr. Morgan, hey, he's with the patient right now. Can I take a message? Hold on. Story check. Does David have his contact information? I never actually thought of that. This is the late 90s. You don't have Dr. Morgan's contact information. Okay, not surprised because we should. He's our doctor. Story hack, we do have his information, but it's just an office number, not a mobile phone or pager. Because, again, like I said, this is like literally on the cusp of Y2K. So I'm going to put a note here that we have office number of Dr. Alex Morgan. All right. David sighs, frustrated. All right. Can you tell him Dr. Holloway is here? It's about the Family History Project. Wait, the Family History Project? No, no, it's not. I think it's mixing up a couple of storylines here. Story hack. He says to her, "Ma'am, please listen. This is regarding my health. I need to speak to him now. Can you perhaps find him for me?" He's. I'm confused right now. Like I think he's just desperate. It's a matter of life and death because the freaking vortex took the only other NPC in this entire series. Nurse hesitates, then nods slow. Oh, we should have rolled for it. I forgot. All right, sir. Have the seat up. Check on him. We should have rolled for it. I totally forgot about that. This will be fast talk, which we have a measly 5. Bargain is 5. Yeah, so let's roll for it. I'm assuming we'll fail. Yeah, 67. Redo. I rolled for fast talk. I failed the roll. Does she? What did she do? The nurse Brown shaking her head. Sir, you'll have to wait your turn. Dr. Morgan's a very busy man. Okay, that makes more sense. We failed a roll. Not doing so well today with rolling dice, but that's okay. All right. We can't just wait around while who knows what. Okay, so here's what we'll do. We take a number. We'll tell the nurse, please just, I need to see him as soon as possible. And we'll wait in the waiting room with the manuscript. So we're just sitting there in the waiting room, probably surrounded by other sick people, families or whatever. A guy with the waiting room is filled with the usual hospital sounds, the murmur of voices, the clatter of equipment, and the occasional cough. You find yourself clutching the manuscript tightly, your eyes darting nervously around the room. An elderly man in a wheelchair glances at you, then at the book, his expression of mixed curiosity and concern. Interesting. Elderly man in a wheelchair. Does David know this elderly man in the wheelchair? The man's face is unfamiliar, but there's something vaguely unsettling about his tense gaze and the way he clutches a worn leather-bound book in his lap. Another book. All right. Maybe he's just a reader. Oh, you know what? Maybe he recognizes us from the library. Story hack. The elderly man is a usual visitor to the library. He's a reader. And perhaps he recognizes David. Acquaintance, perhaps. That makes more sense. The man wheels himself closer, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Dr. Holloway from the library, yes. Well, let's not say he knows his name. Redo, he doesn't know David's name. He just knows of his face, seen him at the library every so often. But David doesn't recognize him. Just through passing, just keeping it there. David frowns, trying to place the man's face. I'm sorry, do I know you? All right, David asked that. We should be asking that. David tightens his grip on the manuscript. He asks the old man, what does he want? David is still very confused, etc. Hmm. Sorry, there's a glare in my screen. There we go. The old man leans closer, his eyes gaze. I've seen you at the library, he rasped, with that book. He gestures toward the manuscript. Be careful, young man. Some knowledge is best left undisturbed. Okay. Interesting. Now, while we're chatting, Dr. Alex Morgan finally enters the waiting room very urgently and confused. to see David so soon. So he just walks right in. Dr. Morgan's eyes widen in surprise. Dr. Holloway, what are you doing here? Is everything all right? He glances at the manuscript of the old man, expression shifting from concern to suspicion. David stands up, walks up to Dr. Alex Morgan, and says, "We need to speak in private. Something terrible just happened." No roll for this because again, Dr. Alex Morgan is a pretty much a friend at this point. He's an ally in this situation to an extent. Dr. Morgan, his curiosity piqued, leads you to a small, empty office down the hall. He closes the door, an expression mix of concern and quaint anticipation. Now, Dr. Holloway, he says, "Tell me what happened." David frantically repeats everything that transpired at the library, including mentioning the disappearance of the strange intruder, and more importantly, the professor. Dr. Morgan listens intensely, his brow furrowed in concern. When you finish, he leans back in his chair, thoughtful expression on his face. "This is concerning, Dr. Holloway. It seems we've underestimated the forces at play here." David stands up in frustration. He's questioning who Dr. Alex Morgan really is. Who is he? Who the professor is? Who are they with? What is this group? Why was there an intruder? Question after question. He's panicky. He's freaking out. This guy's just not used to any of this. So again, we survived the sanity. I'm gonna roll for sanity at the moment just because of that. Let's see, actually. Okay, let's roll for sanity. 40 or less. We're good. Okay, 46. Oh, nope. I did not. I failed. Let's roll d4. How much do we drop? 4. All right. So we'll go down to 30. Let's see, 36. We're currently at for sanity points. All right. That's not good. We're keeping track. We don't even mention that to the Oracle just yet. Okay, Dr. Morgan's sigh is an expression turning serious. "Dr. Holloway, I know this is a lot to take in, but you please sit down. We need to talk." We are talking. David takes a deep breath. He sits down, still gripping the manuscript, surprised that the manuscript is not doing anything at the moment. Perhaps when it's closed, David is muttering to himself. Nothing happens. Now he's just talking to himself, trying to make sense of this whole thing. All right. Dr. Morgan leans forward, his voice low and urgent. "Dr. Holloway, the group I mentioned, we call ourselves the Watchers. We have been aware of these forces for centuries, working to understand and contain them." The Watchers. Okay, so we have a group mentioned now. This is going to be 2 stars worthy. The Watchers. Obviously, assuming a cult of some type, a regime. David is willing to listen, but he also inquires about who the intruder might have been with. Do the Watchers have some mortal enemy? So we have the Watchers. Let's see, Dr. Morgan. We'll put members down. So we got Dr. Morgan and Professor Elias. So Elias, and then let's see. Dr. Morgan nods grimly. "There are those who seek to awaken these forces, to unleash them upon the world. They are called the Awakened, and they are our sworn enemies." Let's change that. Story hack. Let's change the name to a pun regarding the water, because of all the sea related. Somebody's gonna type it out. Here we go. Simulated sea. Dr. Morgan's expression darkens. The Dagonites. he says, his voice filled with a mixture of disgust and fear. They worship the Deep Ones, those ancient creatures that dwell beneath the waves. They seek to bring about a new age, an age of chaos and destruction. Okay, so the Deep Ones. The Watchers are good. The Deep Ones, or the Dragonites, the Dagonites, if I'm pronouncing that right. The Dagonites. Just writing this down really quick. Let's see. Bad. Colt. All right. David says, "What do you think happened to the professor? Don't tell me that this book took his life. We, I barely met the guy." Let's see. Probably did take his life. Sacrificed himself. Dr. Morgan shakes his head, expression grim. I don't know, David. I fear the worst. The book. It's a conduit to these forces. It's dangerous. David stands up, realizing that the book perhaps teleported the two somewhere. They need to find out where. Dr. Morgan agrees, a determined glint in his eye. We need to find answers, David. We need to do it fast. David assumes that the Watchers meet somewhere. Can he perhaps go to this location, if there is one? Like a cavern or some mansion or somewhere. They're secretive about it. Dr. Morgan hesitates and nods slowly. There is a place there, but it's dangerous. Are you sure you're ready for this? Story hack. The Doctor does realize the secrecy of the Watchers. However, because Dr. Morgan, David, has experienced the supernatural, he is bound to be part of the Watchers, or a witness. So we got the Watchers, we got the Dagonites. Dr. Morgan pulls out a card, scribbling an address in the back. This is where we meet, he says, his voice low. Be careful, David. Not everyone there will be welcoming. What does the address say? Let's see. Card is the Orient Library, 200 Arkham Street. That makes sense. Arkham, Massachusetts. On the back, Dr. Morgan also scrawled, ask for Henry Armitage. Okay, so I took a note of that. Ask for Henry Armitage, if I'm again pronouncing that name right. Armitage, whatever. So that's in our inventory, which really is no inventory. I guess I could use this little note section in the bottom right corner of this. Again, this is the classic sheet. This isn't the 7th edition called Cthulhu. But let's see. I'm gonna put down business card of the Orny Library, which is in Arkham. So we're officially in Call of Cthulhu mythos lore, Arkham, which again a lot of Call of Cthulhu stuff happens around. Now, before departing, David does ask Dr. Morgan if he will be there himself at a certain time and which day. He shakes his head. I can't be there. I can't be sure, David. My duty's here. He trails off, then adds, but I'll try to get word to Armitage. He'll know what to do. David Shanks. I was going to say David Shakes, not Shanks. Fool you. I'm actually with the Dagonites. Straight to his stomach. Okay, let's try it again. David Shakes Dr. Morgan's hands firmly and thanks him for the assistance. David leaves the office, goes to the front, and walks outside to his car. We're just going from point A to point B. The city noise and traffic feel overwhelming after the sterile quiet of the hospital. You clutch the manuscript, a sense of urgency building with you. Arkham is a long drive, but you have to get there to find answers and to understand what happens. All right. No success rolls today, so no check marks whatsoever. But I am really tired, and I was hoping to go a little longer, but we reached a good point here in the story. I hope you guys enjoyed. This episode was decent. There was some, we had that obviously chaotic opening, and now some more development actually on the lore of what's transpiring. We learn of two organizations, two groups, the Watchers, who are essentially from our perspective the good guys, that Dr. Morgan and the MIA Elias are part of. There is the Dagonites, if I'm pronouncing it right. I keep on saying Dragonites, which is the supposed opposite, the opposing regime that is trying to summon whichever mythos, elder god, uh, into this world. So, and we can't forget this is Y2K, so it's going to happen on December 30th, 31st, whichever was during that year. So, 1999. Thanks for watching, as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one.